Andy, by the way, is phenomenal at predicting things. I think Cubs wins is probably not one of them, so we'll hope he's incorrect on this. So I want to talk to you today about all the interactions that we've analyzed. You may have seen on a slide we've analyzed 1.3 billion interactions across really your customers and through your customers' interactions with you. And I want to share some of the findings that we've seen from all of these interactions. And really share these findings in really two lenses. I think one lens is the lens that Andy and Christy spoke to you about, which is how do we use these interactions today and the data that we found from these interactions to really change the way that your call center operates and to leverage the solution wheel that we saw up here earlier. The second part of this discussion is really to think about how do we leverage the insights that we found in the call center more broadly outside of the call center, really across every facet of how your interaction interacts with your customers. And that isn't always just through the contact center or the call center. It's through a lot of other channels as well. So that's really the lens we're going to look through in this discussion, are those 2 points. Given some people took us down the baseball route, I'll use some baseball analogies throughout this dialogue. So the first place I want to start is at a very high level. Why is this, I don't know why it's not sharing the correct deck. I'm not sure why this deck isn't sharing. So I'm going to ad-lib and tell you what these categories say and what the percentages are. So the red bucket up here across all, there we go. Thank you. Perfect. Technology. So what would have been great is if I explained this first and he popped up and it's completely different data on these slides. So across these 1.3 billion interactions, at a very high level, we've decoded all of these interactions and bucketed these into very high buckets. And the one thing that we found is 31% of all the talk time and really average the full average handle time on calls is spent in a productive nature. So it is productive interaction where you're having a conversation and you're solving that problem. Unfortunately, it's only 31% of the time. It's kind of like saying a guy in baseball is batting 300. That's phenomenal. It's kind of what's happening here. 30% that means 30% of the time he gets on base. It means 70% of the time he does not get on base. So what we're talking about here is 70% of the time on the phone is not productive. And where is that time being spent? So again, across all these interactions, 31% of the time is in non-interaction time. It is hold in silence. There's not conversation happening. The silence time is not every second of silence. The silence has to be at least 10 seconds or longer before we even count it. So it's not all silence. It's silence that is 10 seconds or longer added to all the whole time. So across all the interactions we have, 31% of all the time on the phone is spent with no dialogue occurring. The next piece is distress. So we are able to linguistically measure the distress in the interactions. 14% of all the time spent on phone calls is the customer having a dialogue where there's significant distress on the call. It's not really productive, right? They're having all this emotional and psychological distress on the call. It's clearly an opportunity for improvement. 8% is time spent transferring and handling transfers to other departments, where you're now going to have to redo a lot of what just happened on that call. So it's really not productive time either. And then 16% of it is post-call activities. So it's not the actual talk time on the phone, it's post-call activities. It could be productive, but it's clearly an opportunity where from a customer's perspective, and the customer's point of view, all the time you're spending in the contact center is not spent interacting with the customer in a productive manner. So huge opportunity across all this data to drive improvement. And if you think about, again, the baseball analogy, you're not going to focus on the 30% of the time where they get on base. You're going to focus on the 70% of the time where they don't get on base. They strike out, they fly out, they ground out to figure out how to improve their performance. And so what we've done is kind of drill down on this to say, all right, this is the opportunity for improvement. How do we improve on that 69% of the time that is not productive across these billions of interactions? And one of the things that a lot of you might be aware of is we've built a massive amount of algorithms to understand some of the root causes around what drives that unproductive time. So we built over 10 million algorithms that decode every second of human language and creates hundreds of new attributes on every call around what is actually occurring in that call. Not just the distress, but the level of engagement, the level of empathy, the reason for the call, the actual personality style. Was there positive sentiment? Was there negative sentiment? Were there different life events that were occurring? So we're extracting all this information from all these interactions to figure out how to make somebody perform better so that there is more productive time on the phone call. And what we really uncovered, and what you may have seen what you saw in some of Christy's slides and some of Andy's dialogues, is variability. What we found is people don't do the same job the same way. That donut you saw with 31% time and the different hold time and distress time, that looks different for different agents. And it doesn't look different for different agents just because we have somebody from one of your organizations versus a different organization. It looks vastly different for people that do the exact same job in the exact same organization. There's a huge amount of variability. And so we looked at variability in three lenses. Non-interaction time, so the amount of hold and silence time. Negotiation time, which is how much time is spent for sales or collections or retention customers, how much time is spent negotiating, selling, trying to retain customers, and then caller distress. You think this isn't even an agent metric, right? These may be our agent metrics. This is not an agent metric. It's how distressed is the caller. We looked at variability. And to look at variability, we tried to make it kind of easy to understand and consume the fact that people are variable. So we stacked ranked all of them. We took all the agents in the exact same organization, in the exact same skill group, and we said, who has the least amount of non-interaction time? Who has the most amount of non-interaction time? We stacked ranked them in each skill group for all of our customers. And then we quartiled them in each of these buckets. And so what a quartile is we said, okay, these are the 25% of the people who are the best, the 25% who are at the worst at non-interaction time. And we found is there is 3.8x variability. So what that means is that for the same people doing the exact same job in the exact same skill group across all of our customers and all those interactions, on average, the lowest performing 25% of the agents had 3.8 times as much non-interaction as the best 25% of the agents. So if the best agents have 30 seconds of hold and silence time on every call, that means the lower performing agents have almost 120 seconds of hold and silence time on every call. We didn't pick the extreme buckets. We quartiled and we looked across all of the data. So that is a massive amount of variability. So when you look at that productive wheel we saw before, one of the contributing factors for why these interactions are better or worse is this notion of really human variability. Sales time, similar. So how much time an agent sells to collect or retain or is vastly different. And this one's frankly pretty surprising, is caller distress. So how distressed is the caller on a call? For your best agents versus your worst agents, the callers are more than twice as distressed on the call. So they're coming in with the same level of distress, but what this means is these people are probably able to resolve that distress, and I'm guessing there are people here who are adding to that distress during that interaction. So again, just different ways to look at variability. And what this really gets at is it's kind of like a snowflake. No two snowflakes are alike. I don't know who could prove that. Andy, you have any data to prove it?
I have data to disprove it.
There you go. Phenomenal. I'm guessing no two agents perform the same job function the same way. So across thousands and thousands of agents or hundreds of agents at your center, there are no two agents who are performing the exact same job the same way. And it turns out there's massive differences with how they are performing that job. Christy spoke about a different type of variability. So aside from two people performing the same job very differently, an individual agent will handle different types of customers very differently. So Christy explained that in her talk track about the different personality styles and how the best agents are 23% more effective with their best connections than they are with their worst connections when you look at the personality style data. And really what if you can get them to their best personality match, you have a significantly better interaction. And she articulated that, I think, very, very well with this chart that you saw here about how within an individual agent, they are much better, and the interactions are much better when they talk to their best connections versus their worst connections. So let's kind of pause here in terms of variability and make sure this really kind of makes sense, because I think it's a really profound and it's kind of obvious, right, that people are different. But when you look at the data through this lens, it's frankly mind-numbing how different people are when they perform the exact same job function. Can use a baseball analogy as well, but you have a lineup of 9 guys who are batting in a baseball game in the major leagues. These are the best players on the planet, right? I mean, you've taken the cream of the crop. They've made it throughout their entire career. They made it to the pro level. They have 500-600 at bats across an entire season, but yet their stats are massively different. They're not massively different because it's me versus Chris Bryant, who's phenomenal. These are the best people in the world at playing this sport, and they are massively different. So I think it's not surprising people are massively different, but how different they are in the data is pretty surprising in a contact center. And by the way, these aren't baseball players who have been trained their entire life to play this sport really well. These are people that you are all hiring through different means with vastly different backgrounds, with vastly different training, that we are putting into an environment to try to service and provide the customer with the best experience they can with the tools that we have. It's not surprising there's this much variability. And so people perform the same job differently, and they handle different types of callers very differently. That's ultimately what drove us to create this product set. So the suite that we saw, Andy put up there, products, is addressing that variability around human behavior and around the impact of personality on interactions. So routing is taking that concept of how individuals handle different types of callers differently. So if we can just give an agent the callers that they handle really well, we will naturally create better interactions. It's like a baseball player where they're good at hitting fastballs and not curveballs. Just give them fastballs. Never pitch them a curveball. They'll be a better baseball player and a better batter. Give the batter who hits curveballs really well, give them the curveballs. Let them hit those balls really well. So routing is really creating this benefit by knowing that people handle different types of people better, give them their strengths. Work style and coaching, which is leveraging all the data we have for coaching. Work style is coaching on just the personality style attributes. Those two applications are really focused on the other aspect of variability, the fact that no two people perform the same job the same way. Let's identify where they struggle. Let's focus on reducing their individual variability so that they can handle different types of people, different types of calls in a more consistent manner. So in the baseball analogy, instead of giving the guy who's good with fastballs just fastballs, let's also still teach him how to hit curveballs, because at some point he might have to hit a curveball. Let's teach him how to hit curveballs so that when that curveball comes, he's ready. He can hit it really well. So it's really addressing that variability that way. Quality is really focused on creating a better QA function and a better system of record for call recording. But it also focuses on innate variability that we see in the QA function, where there's a fairly inefficient process today around how audits are assigned and how they're handled and how they're processed. We can reduce that variability through some of the applications we built within the quality space. And this is actually focused on the variability of customers, which we didn't talk about as much in this, but customers are massively variable. Just because I called to check on my benefits and Tim called to check on his benefits as well, it doesn't mean we had the same experience or we interpreted that experience the same way. We will interpret experiences vastly differently from each other. And so this is the ability to predict the experience that somebody had on that call, the Net Promoter Score, the Customer Effort Score, the CSAT score, the likelihood to attrit on that call, by leveraging all the analytics and data we have on human behavior, personality, and variability to figure out how did that experience actually go, and how will that drive how they interact with this company in the future. So it's looking at variability through the lens of the consumer, which really gets to that kind of this whole product set around how we address variability, human behavior, and really ultimately this is the power of personality in the call center. But why are we just, and I think most of you here believe that on some level. You may not have leveraged the whole product set, but you're leveraging aspects of it, and you see the power of personality and the power of this variability in human behavior to leverage this in how you use the application to really change the experience that your customers have when they interact with you. But why are we just focused on the call center? This is so profound. If Christy used an example earlier around when you talk to people where you have a natural connection versus people where it's sucking the life out of you, that isn't just about the call center. It's about everything we do in life. And so why are we really thinking about this just in the contact center light? And so I want to talk about some of the things that we're thinking about more broadly as an organization. And one of those is to move outside of the call center and a bit more into the contact center. So one of the things on our roadmap in the future is to leverage the concept of work style plus our analytics to create an email engine. And that email engine has the capability to identify the personality style of the recipient in the email. And this email could be in a contact center environment, could be in a sales environment, it could be any sort of interaction environment, to identify the personality style of the recipient when you write the email to, in essence, spell check it. But spell check it from a personality style perspective about that recipient. Is the language appropriate? Is it appropriate for that individual's personality style? I happen to be somebody who likes bullets. I like the very facts, figures, and structure of bullets. Emoticons aren't for me in terms of really enjoying that in reading my emails. But there are some people who would hate bullets and would love the more personal aspect of an email that has more personal language and has some emoticons in there. So I have the ability through analytics and data to identify the variability that recipients have and suggest changes within the email content to create a better email interaction. And ultimately, the same thing we're doing in the call center on calls, create a more effective conversation over an email channel. So it's an example of something that we were looking at building as an additional add-on to move outside of pure calls to contact center. But it's just one example. Again, why just stop in the call center, in the contact center? Why not go more broad? And so using the same concept around the product suite, what we've really been talking about is call center. That wheel we talked about is really just the application of leveraging personality in the call center. But again, why just the call center? Why not the broader contact center? And so the example we talked about is email. You can do chats, right? So you can do the same sort of concept that we've talked about and leveraging the same variability we see, the same personality styles in chats, in email, the IVR, right? So you call into an IVR. I am going to want a different type of IVR interaction than my wife. She's a very different personality style than me. She's very fun, spontaneous, creative, playful, as you can tell in my monotone voice. And I'm also a very fun, spontaneous, creative individual as well. So I want a different IVR interaction than she does. I want an IVR who just says, push 1, push 2, here's the data, here's the information. She would like a different voice probably, a different type of interaction, a different type of IVR, a different type of speech engine. And she will want to use self-service more when it is more fun and more tailored to her. If self-service is fun with me, I'm probably hanging up and trying to go somewhere else where I can be as quick and efficient as I can. And so why not think about all of those applications in self-service? The website. Again, not just the IVR, but the website. I would probably like a different web interaction, web experience than my wife would. What's visually displayed there. When I authenticate into a website for a company, a completely different interaction of what I do, where I go, how I digest information, how I self-serve, based off my personality style than my wife's personality style. A mobile app, right? So if you think about a mobile app on the phone, all of these are these different touch points with the consumer where what we're doing in the call center is going to have the same impact and the same experience, there is still a voice. It's not an agent voice. It's your corporate voice. It's somebody who designed the IVR. It's somebody who designed the website. It's somebody who designed all of those applications. It's still a voice. Why not have that voice in the channel of the person who's actually going to consume it? Same thing on marketing. So if you think about an email campaign, a banner ad that somebody sees, an advertisement, an email, I am going to stay at a hotel because it is cheap, it saves me money, it's as close as possible to where I came from and to where I'm going because it saves me time. I'm going to stay at a hotel for those reasons. That's why that advertisement would click for me. For my wife, it's a fun hotel. It's cool. It's, there's a different reason why she'll stay there. Oh, it's $20 more? Oh, whatever. Who cares? It's only $20 more. For me, it's $20 more. I'm not staying there. So Frank didn't mention this. I happen to be the interim CFO as well. So there's not much spending there. So, but the marketing in somebody's channel, sales, same thing. In a direct sales interaction, having that sales dialogue being in the mindset of the individual recipient, and HR. So we hire people. Who do we hire? We generally hire people that we connect with. You go, you have an interview, you talk to the person. Oh man, I love them. We had a great dialogue. It was a great interview. We'd have a phenomenal time working together. And then if you kind of expand that to talent management and how well you're able to manage that individual or recognize them or influence them, and if they get promoted and where they move around, there's this whole aspect around HR and talent management, which is not just the hiring aspect, but who is assigned as their manager? Who changes to be their manager over time? How do you motivate them? How do you incent them? How do you mentor them as they continue to grow in their career? A lot of that, they're variable. They are different people, just like consumers are in the contact center. So really expanding this personality concept, and I've just laid out some examples, but to all aspects of your organization. If it works so well on a phone call, why won't it work everywhere else? And if you think about this, the phenomenal place of where you are in the call center is you have access to all of this data. Instead of just being well, we're the call center, we're focused here. You are sitting on the data source for your organization of all of this data around your customers, their state of mind, their personality style, their communication style, what they want from you as an organization. You are the ones who have probably the richest source of that data for your company. So as you think about not just here, but how could your organization leverage this power of personality and this concept of variability across all of these different aspects of your company? Where they can get that data is from you and from your call centers. In a lot of cases, we have used this data to give you this lens here, but we have this data for your organization, or for some of you, it might be something you're looking at doing later on and putting our analytics servers into our capture servers. But you're creating an immensely valuable data source that I think could really change the way that your organization thinks about interacting with people. And so as we kind of end this session and you kind of go throughout the rest of the call to loyalty, but also as you leave here, I want you to think not just about how do you leverage the products that we have today in the call center, but how do you think about leveraging this data around personality to change the way that your organization operates, and to think about the call center as really almost the most important strategic data source that your company has on your customers, and how to leverage that across your entire enterprise. I welcome you to come to myself or to us as well. If you leave here and you have some ideas about ways to leverage this more broadly across your enterprise, please come ask us. We're happy to help walk you through that or help out in those dialogues within your organization. And as Andy mentioned, we really pride ourselves on building an open data source. It's not data that we are just trying to keep under the vest. It's an open data source. We are building APIs to pull that data and have built APIs to pull that data into your other data sources to really make this a reality within your organization.